All right, so fresh on the heels of inbound last week, I figured that I should probably start creating videos again. For those who don't know, we used to do these 3 years ago. Did at least 3 to 4 every week, so not sure I'll ever get to that cadence again. But thought with inbound, it was a great way to start with so many new kind of product betas that have come out in HubSpot. It's been a lot to kind of go through and get to a point where I feel comfortable even kind of demoing this. So I'll start with a caveat that there might be some things that I missed. There might be some things that get corrected. I'm sure there's plenty of smart people in the comments will point those out to me. But yeah, I wanted to talk about Data Studio. So Ops Hub, now Data Hub. And if we look at Data Studio, it is basically HubSpot's answer to really being able to combine your CRM data with outside sources, right? So subscription and usage data, event data, so you can build segments without adding custom fields or writing code. The other thing that you're probably going to hear from a lot of folks is it's Clay in HubSpot. And I think one thing that folks on LinkedIn and myself included sometimes don't take into account is a lot of people haven't used Clay, especially kind of the people that we want to help with this, right? So I've got a Clay account. We definitely use Clay here. Some examples of what we do is just simple enrichment. We build living signal-based lead scoring and pipe that back into HubSpot. It's probably the two things I do the most. It's obviously got a lot of other uses. It's going to look like what I consider just a living spreadsheet. And then obviously you go in here and you can do waterfall enrichment and using multiple data sources for that enrichment. So a lot of things here. Data Studio as it sits today, I'm not going to say it's like a one-to-one with Clay, but it is probably the most powerful way that we've had to combine data in HubSpot. So spent the last 3 or 4 days kind of just going through everything. I think, again, one thing that I love using ChatGPT for is creating dummy data. So in my demo account, we set up, we basically set up 2 kind of data, I'll call them sets. One for the CRM, and then one that's going to have data related to product usage. The data that I created, it's literally the same contact. So, it's not going to show all the capabilities inside once I get in there, but I think it will give you a good kind of just overview of how we are or how we can use this, right? So let's just start with kind of getting through everything here. You're going to have obviously the intro, you're going to have quick start options. You can see a test that I created here, but this is basically like, documentation, source library, example use cases which are helpful, and then quick start. If we move left to right, you're going to see data sets. So these are the different data sets that you can create. You can see I created one of these, the different data sources from HubSpot, and then obviously external data sources, which I've already connected. And with that, your source library is, you can see that I've connected my Google Sheets account. And so you'll obviously be able to do that for all the different sources. And there are, I would say there's a good amount of sources right off the bat. If we look at those external data sources, you'll see that here. I'm sure they will be adding more. So if we go in the manager, let's go here. This is where you can kind of see all of that. So a lot of different options. I think a lot of people are going to be using Airtable. I think a lot of people are going to be using Google Sheets, but there is quite a bit right out of the box. So good to note. What I'm going to do today is just take 2 very simple data sets, right? So let's just start, and I'm going to kind of show you how we have connected an external data source. So if we add an external data source and I go to Google Sheets, and then I can select that, I can open my Google Drive, I'll log in through here, it'll click in, and then you just select, right? And so already kind of got that set, and that's going to be this product data sheet. Now there's a couple different ways you can do this. I just started with adding the external data source, and so I had that ready to go. But if you walk through and you start from scratch, you again can kind of go through here and start with your basically primary data source. So I'm going to go in here and I'm choosing all of my contacts from my demo account. So that's obviously a lot, but we want to filter that out. So I'm going to add a filter below, and I'm going to say, let's say create date. I'm going to do create date is yesterday. And so yesterday, let's apply that. And so now you'll see the data that I've got here. Within that, I don't have phone numbers, so I didn't create that. So I can delete that. So now you're kind of just formatting, what it is that you want to see. And I am going to want to go with email domain. Okay, great. So now I've got these here. Now I'm going to say, hey, I want to add another source, right? There's a couple ways that you can do this. We can just add a source here, and this is where you'll pick up the external data source, and I would consider this just kind of the normal view, but they have a really cool advanced view here. And so here we can again use this data source, and then we can choose how we want to manage that join. Now, you'll see this same view if you just go through the regular one, but I think the most important thing to note here is you're going to have join keys. And so just think of joining like sliding two notebooks together. So each person's info lines up on the same line. Because I've got the same number of contacts in each data set, this isn't going to be applicable as much because it's not like I've got like 100 contacts and then 50 folks from product usage. So that's the first thing to note. The other thing to note is an inner join is going to keep only roles that exist in both notebooks, and a left join is going to keep every contact and just leave blanks if there's no match. So for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and leave this. I'm going to just update this, and I'm going to continue preparing the data. And so one thing you want to notice first is we've got kind of all the data here. So very similar to kind of what we see in Clay. But what I want to do is go back here, manage my join, and then do multiple matches, because when we do multiple matches, you're going to be able to see up here, we have summarized view and we have an unsummarized view. And that is going to let you do some different things. And so if we go into, let's go to the unsummarized view. I think it's important to note the summarized view, we can, basically we can group by the primary source and use this for CRM syncs, workflows, and segments, while an unsummarized view is used for reporting. So again, I think it's important to note that. So now that we're in here, this is where we can start kind of doing some cool stuff. And so from the unsummarized view, there's just a couple things that I'm going to want to take everybody through. If we go back to our columns, and if we remember Clay, it's the idea of what can we do with these columns, right? So the first thing that we can do is we can do enrichment. And we can enrich these columns based upon the domains. That's one way to look at it. So let's just say I want to see industry, and I want to see maybe LinkedIn URL, and I want to see, actually, let me go back, make sure. Yeah, enrich company columns. So I'm going to keep this simple, and I'm just going to do industry, and I'm going to do LinkedIn URL. And then what's going to enrich that, right? So I want to use the email domain, save and create that. And I'm just going to call this my beta inbound 2025 test. And I'm not going to put a description. I know that's bad hygiene, but this is a video. So now basically what happens is it's going to enrich these, right? And so I already ran this test on this data set. We get a few that enrich because, again, this is based off GPT, and not all these domains are going to be, not all these domains are going to be necessarily like actual live domains. And again, this is a summarized view, right? So we can wait for this, and it's going to take a little bit, but I'm going to go back to the unsummarized view here because there are a few other things that I want to show you. So right there, we did an enrichment column, and I think that most closely resembles, Clay. So let's go ahead and create a new column here, and I'm going to want to look at formulas. So if we look at formulas, okay, and here you go. So we can kind of see like a couple of these. We got the LinkedIn URL, and a couple of these, we got the industry. And again, if we actually had proper domains, my assumption is we would have a better fill rate for all of those. But just to show you what's going on. So now let's go to formulas. So we can basically, create formulas based upon the data. And so I might look here and say like, hey, what formula do I want to, partake in? When you build a custom formula, I think what's really cool is you can add a formula with AI. And so there's different ways that you can do that. As we do that, we can basically say, I could basically write like, hey, create a column that outputs yes if renewal date is within, I don't know, let's just say 45 days from today. Otherwise, no. All right, this is pretty rudimentary. And again, this is only as good as the data that we have in it. But as you can see here, it just created that formula for me and it populates there. So pretty cool, pretty awesome. The final piece of the puzzle, which there's two more pieces that I want to show. So I'm gonna go ahead and save that. So now we've got that as well. Let me see. So I've got that field. I didn't name the field, or I didn't name the column, because I want to show you one other thing. So let's just create a new column again, and we can do data agent, and we create a smart column. So this will be very, very close to, I think, what Clay offers with Claygen, and that is just the ability to use AI to go ahead and derive what we want to derive, whatever that is. So I'm just going to call this test column, and I'm going to say based on the domain. I'm going to type this. Tell me what, I don't know, I've already done this. I'm just going to ask, please tell me what industry this is. As an example, you can say it can come from web research, and then we can just do a string. This is not the best example because I've already got industry that I've got scraped from there, but you can basically preview that. You can go ahead and click here. So actually what I might do is based upon, tell me what industry this is. Yeah, let's go ahead. So I'll save and create that. Might not come through, might take a second. And so, again, same thing, but it's more to show you the, like the idea there. So while that's working, we've got one more thing that I think is pretty cool, and this is previewed on the demo on the website for the actual demo itself. So now we've still got that. If we go back to the summarized view here, when we go to choose columns, you'll see that we can aggregate these into distinct count, into max, to minimum, to most frequent, or it can even create a summary measure. So you can actually manipulate those columns. I mean, all in all, this is it's not as hard to learn as you think it is, but there is a lot at play, right? And so doing this as like a simple demo video, I'm hoping that I do it justice, but it has incrementally upgraded the way that you can just work inside of HubSpot. And I think that's amazing. And so this is pretty cool. Now we can kind of see the AI results from finding the industry. I mean, again, we now have this summarized view. We can use this in a report. We can use it in the workflow. We can use it in the segment. We can sync it to the CRM. There's all kinds of things that we can do. We can select the sync frequency. So if we've got a Google Sheet that's getting updated if it's getting updated incrementally, you can do that here. I mean, the sky's the limit. I think this is just a very, very powerful tool, and I am excited to play around with it and would love to hear how y'all are using it. Hope to be doing more of these, and definitely reach out with questions.